Hi, Scott. What's going on? What is happening in this crazy world of real estate?
Yep, Victoria. Well, as you know, there was a verdict on Halloween where there were allegations of antitrust conduct, where simply put, the offer of clear cooperation was found to be violative of antitrust laws. There was a situation where a seller was paying a listing agent, and the listing agent was paying the buyer's agent, and the buyer gained representation. And I never agreed with one contractual counterpart paying for the representation of the other. It always seemed to me a really, really tidy legal fiction. Right. It's a tidy little legal fiction, and people are so emotionally charged with this transaction. They take leave of their senses. Plus, they get good service. So why not take the good service? These are pros. They do know the neighborhood. They do know the value. Why wouldn't you take this fantastic service? Who wouldn't? So, based on each of our backgrounds, we are fully equipped to say, I have issues with this. And the key function of our entire dialogue series is this: ask practitioners, what will you do? If there's no longer either, whether it's disallowed or the offer of compensation can be done voluntarily, if it's not, if there is no money being paid by the seller, then it's up to the buyer's agent to get paid by the buyer. Now, in your experience, working with Coldwell Banker, working with Exit, working with title companies, mortgage companies, very few people have your background, Victoria.
All of the larger brands, yes.
And all the brands, you're an expert. You know more than anyone I know, probably. If you add them all up together,
I don't know about that.
Have you, in your experience, has buyer agency ever risen to the level of 100% buyer agency agreements and then specify what they're going to charge?
No, absolutely not. So that should have happened in the 90s when they changed over from sub-agency to buyer representation, and that did not happen. So basically the seller continued to offer the compensation to the buyer agent, and that commission was always coupled. And right now, that is what this whole lawsuit was about, to eliminate that. Buyer agent goes to, and buyer goes to buyer agent, has their own contract, seller and the listing agent have their contract. When you think about it, Scott, it does make sense.
Right. And then I know you're trying to explain to whoever's seeing this, but to me, there was always an unfairness, and it had a real practical approach where I'll go overall, and then New York State. Overall, all that a realtor needed to do to earn a commission was get in a deal. Yes, there's a lot of processes after that. No one's saying that realtors don't do everything. They do. But there was a real unfairness where a seasoned pro would be compensated as much as a brand new rookie. There's also an issue where if you were my listing agent, and I know you're an expert, and I am really a sophisticated investor, I never understood why we had to add someone to our deal. We have to add someone. I got to pay someone to get in our deals. My deal, like, is, too many chefs spoil the broth. I didn't want this person in my home sale. Now you probably think, well, the buyer needs someone. And I say, you're right. So bring that person in of your own volition. I didn't want someone who doesn't know about my home, me or you, in our deal. So now it's
that's
very,
very choice. That's a personal choice. The opportunity to do that. Yes.
It's an unpopular decision, but this is my house, and I don't want anyone in here that's going to give me an obstacle to my sale. That's where we are. Now, someone coming in means it's money off the top. And then when they give me a lower offer for no reason, it's not like they have a reason. It's not like they conducted an appraisal. The offer below my asking price is not based on anything. And worse than that, it had a very, very minor impact. $50,000 to a seller is $50,000. $50,000 to a realtor is negligible. And $50,000 to a buyer, if they're putting 10% down, is $5,000. The seller is the one that's impacted the most. And on top of that, that $50,000, if they are lived there 2 of the last 5 years, the capital gains exemption is real $50,000 tax-free income. So that's a seller. How many times have you ever heard in your life where a seller pays a buyer's commission and they didn't get full price? Everyone. So there we are. Look at the money
Up until a few years ago, that was the case. Yes.
Right. And I think culturally, sellers have thought, oh, it's a part of doing business. It's a tax. It's a fee for a real buyer. That's what they think.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
There's,
Well,
there's so
where
many
are we now?
aspects.
Now that we have this case, what happens now? I mean, the DOJ wants the system changed. And like we said before, it does make sense to do it that way. I mean, I'm not one of those that's jumping up and down about this. It's happened. It's not something that's hilarious. What we're hearing some people saying, "Oh, this is hilarious that they would think this." I don't find this funny. I find this very real. Talking about appeals, talking about all these different things that are going to happen. The fact of the matter is it's happened. And it's not the only lawsuit. There's other lawsuits coming down. The changes are inevitable. They're coming. And what do we do now? Buyer agents have to figure out how to stay in business and get those contracts signed by their buyer that they're bringing in. So let's talk about that. What do you
You're
see?
only talking about the perspective of compensation with regard to licensed professionals. What about the people? What about the people who are of the belief that realtors are free? They accept the service. Think about it. They get a disclosure that says, I work for you. I'm the buyer's agent. I wonder, do they think they get a service at no cost? Do they even think that this fee is baked in? There's no way.
Yes, I'm telling you, I would love to tell you that is not the case, because over the years, we've all heard agents say, I am not free. I will not work for X amount. I am not free. And yet, when you go on social media right now with this whole case going on, they're writing this in writing, but the buyer doesn't have to worry about it because my services are free. And it's not free.
Well,
It was
okay,
never.
so to support what you just said, one of the proposed, I should say, one of the statements in the proposed settlement by Remax said, we won't say we're free anymore. Now, isn't that nuts that they had it? And the Department of Justice said that doesn't come even close. So in their settlement, to get out of this degree of hot water, to avoid billions of dollars, they
had to agree that they would not say that. So it goes to show you exactly what I said. For as many agents that say we were never free, I would never say that, that's how many agents are also saying it. So I'm glad that they did that, because the truth is we're not free.
I know that's the fact, but Remax said their settlement to the United States of America was, we won't lie anymore.
Well, I'm not sure they said we won't lie anymore. They said we will make sure that.
Well, they said they will no longer say they're free. One of the items was, we will not say that. They never were free, because it involved. In fact, it was far from free, because buyers who baked in the commission were actually paying more than the commission because of the financing. Unless you can find me a loan with 0%, then it is more than what they agree to pay. Look,
that's a very good point. That's a very good point. And they didn't realize how much they were paying, and they could not negotiate that, which is why this whole lawsuit came about. So we get that. And I think a lot of people understand that. My question now is, okay, we're past that. It's happened. Here we are. Now what?
Well, we know listings are going to survive. That's what they want. You and I have discussed there will be a race to the bottom in both buyer and seller side, because if there are more options,
yes,
right. So they could lower their commission, just like there's sometimes lower prices for commodities. So the brokers are not going to be able to uphold any kind of internal standard. And the buyers agents are on their own to demonstrate their value. Now, I'm bad on this, because I can demonstrate right now in my kitchen that water boils at 212. I can demonstrate it's going to be the same everywhere on earth. But are you telling me that the realtors have some proof they can demonstrate their value. There's 1.5 million of us. You're telling me we all can say we all have the same value? It's ridiculous. And
No,
some will be.
they can't. And I do think that there are agents that can and will, but I also think that a large percentage will leave the business because they won't be able to demonstrate that. And what I'm seeing, this is, my pet peeve right now, and you and I talk about it all the time, the misinformation that's out there. I see trainers out there saying, well, if this is coming down, you should be more of a listing agent. Well, that doesn't solve the problem, because if I wasn't a listing agent before, how am I going to be a listing agent now? And what will happen? So who's going to represent the buyers? How about let's learn how to demonstrate our real value and get the buyer representation agreement signed properly. And this way the buyer can negotiate directly with the buyer agent the way it's supposed to be, and the way it's going to be. Yes.
Okay, but
No.
think of this whole conversation, the whole specter of this conversation we're in. Think of this. I see articles, how to get the buyer agent the agreement signed. We are the agents of the principals. We are fiduciaries. By definition, our needs are second to that of the client. Now, I don't know how that was ever the case. I don't know how fiduciaries were ever compensated based on sales. However, we are fiduciaries. This is the New York State has the agency law. They're the principals. We are the agents, and we're worried about our best interest. How are we going to get paid versus what serves the client? How can the client get suitable representation at a cost they can afford? Because think of the argument. They're saying first-time buyers or people with 3% down. They're not going to match that. Correct. Well, doesn't that mean they're biting off more than they can chew, and you're asking them to chew it?
Well, I mean, you're talking about following an old system in a new dimension. And that's where the disconnect is. So what you're saying is, how will this be affordable to a first-time home buyer? Why wouldn't it be affordable? Is it because you're talking about the commission that you used to get, the amount that you used to get? Maybe things will change. Maybe buyer agents won't be going out and looking. Maybe they'll be sending the buyers out on their own and say, when you find the house, come to me and I'll help you negotiate it from a remote location. Is that worth 1.5%, 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever you want to call it, from the old way of living? Or do we change it and say, and I know this is not going to be a very popular answer to a lot of people, but the reality is, maybe if I'm doing this way, I work at a flat fee and this is what I do, or I work on a menu. If I do this is what my fee is. If I do that, that's what my fee is. And I'm going to only get involved when the negotiations come about, so that I can give you the proper representation with the experience that I have. Now, that's thinking very out of the box right now. And it's probably not a very popular opinion, but it's probably what's
because there's only three scenarios. One, because agents have not been trained or experienced in this process of getting buyer agency agreements and compelling payment. It's one thing to get a document signed. It's another thing enforcing it, because I don't know if brokers all seek to enforce. So there's only three scenarios. One, you don't make any money because you're reliant upon the seller's offer of compensation. Two, you will ask for an amount that you're accustomed to, and buyers reject it. Three, if you are a real buyer's agent, if you're certified in buyer agent compensation, if you learn how to convey your value, if there are things you can do that make it advantageous to the buyer, if they are fighting to pay you, if they're fighting to hire you like you're the best surgeon, or even you ladies with the best beauty, the women will fight over appointments at the hair salon. I know that, I've seen it. So if you could be the go-to person, then let me say it this way: in the absence of value, price is the only consideration. So if you can demonstrate a real beneficial service, then it's easy to get easy to allow the client to manifest their intention to be bound by the offer.
And it has to be in alignment with what we're doing now. Everything has changed. We're not doing what we used to do in the past. I mean, think about, back in the day, like when I got my license, however many years ago, we had MLS books. We were the gatekeepers of the information. No one had access to that. There was no internet. You needed to, talk to a realtor because we were sharing all this information among ourselves to better serve the public. That has changed with the internet. Then, buyer representation came about. We no longer worked under sub-agency. So that changed things. Again, the internet changed things. Everything has changed. Now, today, there's going to be something completely different that's about to happen. Well, we have to learn how to pivot and go in a different direction. And maybe there'll be agents out there that will be able to say, hey, I this is where my fee is, and it's more than I used to make before. And then there's others that will say, I'm going to do it a different way, and I'm going to work on volume, and I'm going to do it this way, and I can now service those who can't afford the representation that they feel that aren't going to get it. Because that's what I'm hearing all the time. Well,
Right.
buyers they can't afford
And
it.
why isn't that all okay? Why isn't that all of that's okay? But what you're really doing is injecting competition into this market. You're allowing for a free market, which is exactly what the DOJ and these plaintiffs said was the clear cooperation was violative. It did not allow competition. Imagine we don't have a free market. So why wouldn't a realtor who can do more and better and in a more serving as more as a servant, professional servant, why wouldn't they get paid their worth like anyone else? They bring more to the transaction.
Absolutely. And if they're going out and they're conducting business the way they used to conduct it and going out and showing, X amount of homes and, hey, this is what my fee is and it is negotiable and, this is what I get and I can say yes or no to you and as can the client. But then there's also going to be the buyer agent that will say, hey, I'm really concerned about those who can't afford the service. And I'm not out there showing houses all the time, but I'm going to give you a very focused and concise service when the time comes so that you have the representation that you need. And I'm going to do it at this amount. I don't see anything wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it, but I mean,
there's going to be changes, and those changes are out there. So again, my pet peeve is when I go out onto social media and agents are saying, we will appeal, we will not allow this, things are going to stay the same, nothing's going to change. None of that's true. Everything is changing.
Right. Well, your first mistake is going out to social media because these are people with opinions. I mean, no, and seriously, they're. I mean, I'm going to use two words that people don't want to hear. They're unaware and they're incapable. And the reason why we say they're unaware is because they have not been initiated. They're listening to a lot of rah-rah cheerleading, which is misplaced, and it's even silly because there's cheerleading and assertions based on a yet to be decided matter. You heard about 8 jurors that took 150 minutes and they answered 4 questions. We didn't see how that verdict was woven into a judge's decision and order. So we're talking about appealing something you haven't seen. It doesn't exist. It's silly. And they're talking about several bases.
Right. And we're also, we're hearing agents out there talking about how they're going to appeal because this should have been a rule of, not per se, a rule of, what do they call it? A rule of reason, right? It should have been a rule of reason, not a rule of per se. Well, you know what? I don't know that to be the facts, because if this was an antitrust violation and the judge said we're ruling on per se, I have to trust that our attorneys know what they're doing. So the attorneys were out there, if they think that there's an appeal that can happen, great. Tell me what the process is. Explain.
Some people say nothing. Some people say nothing's going to change. And you know what? I agree, because nothing was stopping you before from getting a buyer's agency agreement and getting it paid. Nobody stopped you. So that is the same. So the fact is that when people say that it's going to stay the same, is what they want to do is continue to engage in the practice that was found to be violative. That is going to change.
That is
So people,
absolutely going to change.
it already
It
changed because I've asked an attorney for two different attorneys for boards of realtors. I said, how in the world are these companies that were named defendants who were lost and are now liable for 5.4 billion already? The next suit, Gibbons wants 600. If you go
well,
200
it's
times
200
3,
billion, but if you triple it, yes.
and, just as an aside, do you know? I mean, do you know how many minutes? I'm sorry. Do you know how many? Let me think. 1,000,000 seconds is how long?
I don't know.
Right.
What is it,
Because
a
I
million?
want to give you perspective. People use the B word all the time. Billion,
Oh,
billion, billion.
billions.
A
Yeah, yeah,
million seconds. I'm trying to give you an understanding.
yeah. Oh, let's
A
ask Google.
million. No, I know the answer. So
Oh,
just
okay. Well,
when people
tell me
throw
the
these
answer. Why are
numbers,
you making me wait?
because this is what you do to me. So a
Oh my
million seconds. A million seconds is 11 days. Do you want to
Wow.
know? And this is going to blow your mind. This is going to blow your mind. When people
How
say
many
5
is a
billion
billion?
people, how many seconds, how much time is a billion B seconds? A billion
Oh
seconds is how
boy.
long?
How long is it?
31 years.
So we went from 11 days to 31 years in seconds, from
So
a
what does
million
that
to
tell you? What does that tell you about a million versus a billion?
it tells me that it's bigger than a million, a lot bigger.
It tells you that people throw these numbers around. They are really theoretical because NAR has $100 million, and that's easy to find. Okay, so people are thinking their livelihood is going to be maintained in a way that there are billions of
No,
dollars. Now that's 1 billion
no,
is
it's not
31
going.
years.
And you're talking about a $1.7 billion lawsuit that was just won by the plaintiffs. When you triple that, it was 5.3 billion with a B. And then you have another one that's coming out for 200 billion. Triple that, that's going to be 60 billion. And you'll probably have, I don't know, 10 more lawsuits that will follow this. So
All right, so
this
you
isn't
if
really
your
about the
career,
money.
well,
What is
it is about the money. Hold on. If your career depended on one, getting these billions reduced so that you could bond and appeal, and two, the validity of the claims, would you be happy? Would you think I'm going to stay in
it?
business in a situation where these are my obstacles to overcome?
No, and that's what I'm talking about. When I said it's not about the money, I mean obviously it's all about the money. But what I meant, stop focusing on the money part and focus on the changes are coming down. It's real. We're not filing lawsuits in the billions because this is, the Mickey Mouse Club. We are doing this because there are changes that are coming down. That's really what this is about. The DOJ and Michael Ketchmark, who's the plaintiff's attorney, said they want the system to change. So hear that. Don't
It's
worry
even
about
it's
anything else.
Victoria. It's even worse. It's even worse because Ketchmark, the attorney, I mean, he's the best lawyer, sounds like, since Clarence Darrow. He is so pejoratively describing the system as rigged and as arrogant and as uncaring. He already won. He has the wind in his sails, and he's in
Mhm.
continuing discussions with the DOJ, which is the law firm for the USA with limitless funds. So are you telling me that private attorneys for NAR who already lost are going to fight the United States so that
Right.
you have a career? So if you don't think that's plausible, like I don't, you better pivot. And there are buyers. Rates have just come down. What if they come
Mhm.
down even further? Which, according to some, that's going to happen. The buyers are in the market. Spring market starts January. It's almost Thanksgiving. So there are going to be more people out there. A proficient realtor from the buyer side could easily have more clients and serve them better if they knew how to take an approach that their competition does not.
Right. Right. So again, my issue is when Tracy Casper, who's the new president of NAR, she released a 5-minute video and she said she was incredibly disappointed by the verdict. Okay, I can understand that. She said it was not supported by the law or the facts presented. Not sure I 100% agree with that. I do think that it was supported by the law. We're talking about antitrust laws that were violated. According to the jury, they found that these were violated and the plaintiffs did win. She said it was also not supported by the facts presented. Okay, possibly. Only because she wanted this to be based on a rule of reason rather than a rule of per se. Okay, here's where my issue is. We're giving out this information, and then these are the leaders of the industry, and they're saying we will appeal and we will win. So what that does is it tells the agents across the nation, 1.6 million of them right now, that this is not a big deal. This is going to be overturned. It's going to be fought. We're going to appeal and everything's going to go back to normal. That is not going to happen. And you have trainers out there that are out there saying, well, this is what we're going to do. And this is how we're going, we're going to keep things the same. Don't worry. Nothing will change. It's okay. That's not true.
Okay, so you're telling me that the agents around the country are being, let's say it this way, fairly and neutrally. Practitioners are being told by leadership and by those with an audience that everything's going to be okay. So any realtor has a choice of listening to that and believing in its truth, or as a precautionary measure, or to advance their careers, could do what is most beneficial to themselves and their client, have a stronger, tighter relationship. And prosper. Just think about this: if you know you're getting paid by the seller, which was the approach, clear cooperation, you could do the bare minimum. You could just show up in the house. There's the kitchen, accepted offer. In New York State, the lawyers do the contract. You're good.
And some of them didn't even go to the closing and pick up their check. Can you pick up my check for me and drop it off in my mailbox?
Exactly. So in this case, when you were living under the blanket of security of automatic guaranteed income, now when you have to demonstrate, just like any of the practitioners, no one's picking on realtors, doctors, lawyers, accountants, painters, electricians, landscapers, roofers, anybody, you name it, car mechanics, they have to get paid. So when there's no longer, based on the violative practice, have the chance to rely on that security, is it a bad thing that you show the client and you carry out your intended services? You say, I'll do this, I'll do that. It could be repairs. It could be reduction of closing costs. It could be superior negotiation skills. It could be a closing date. What if I want to close, after Labor Day and my kid has to go to school? So there's so many ways that you could really, really enrich the relationship. Guess why? Because you have to. Whereas before, hey, if we close after Labor Day or Labor Day, I'm going to go to a barbecue. I'll get paid. I don't care. But I'll tell the buyer it is what it is. Now you're basing your compensation and your true representation, and you're acting as a true fiduciary because you have to at least address that issue, if not win that issue.
Right. And there are agents that will be really good at that, and they will get X amount of dollars all the way up here. And then there will be agents that say, I want to do the bare minimum and I'm not even going to show the house. Just give me a call and that'll be all the way down here, and everything in between. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't see this as the big problem that everyone thinks it is. Yes, things are going to change. That's the problem, that people are not facing that there's going to be a change, and they have their head in the sand. And when the meteor hits for real, everyone will be scrambling. Why do that? Why not pivot now?
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about are what would be a pivot. So if there is a situation where there's no across the board compensation, in the past, a broker, whether it's an independent or a franchisee, or I forgot which it is, franchisor, franchisee, an owner of a company,
the broker owner
says, okay, franchisee is the broker owner. Okay, so that means that on a Saturday morning, all the agents are showing property, and they're all expecting correctly and legitimately the compensation that goes with each property. That means 40 agents are going out showing 40 houses, and they each are what is offered. So you could say if 10 work, we made X because we know the commission attributed to each property. Now we're going to have agents of varying capability or even interest in doing the minimum or I mean, entering into all these negotiations with people with no authority. No agent can negotiate. They could suggest, and they have to take it from and these are not agents. These are prospective agents. These are possible relationships. You have to go back to your daddy, the broker, and say, is it okay to go on a date with this guy? Because you don't have the right until daddy says yes. So you're trying to get involved in a relationship with that buyer. And you and I have talked about all the pitfalls of that opportunity, because what if you don't have a buyer's agreement? What if you don't have an understanding and consent? You're going to just chance it and do it as they're all filled with energy and it's a beautiful spring day, and they're going to, they may just ignore you and run right to the listing agent.
Right. And
unless
they
you're
can.
equipped.
They can go directly to the listing agent, even if you showed them the house. It doesn't matter because you don't have any agreement with them and you are not a party to the listing agreement anymore. So things will change. And to my point again, like you say, are we going to have curbside conversations at that point? Are we going to start wheeling and dealing? Like, no, I'll take what I can get. No, you have to be prepared. You have to know exactly what you're going to do. And different clients are going to need different services, all the way up here, all the way down here, and anything in between, like I said before. And some agents will only be up here and they won't do anything else. They'll refer it out to somebody else. And those other agents may just be strictly transactional and say, I don't really care about building a relationship with you. I'm only here to help you negotiate at the time of negotiation. And that's the only relationship I'm going to have. And that also works. So like there's a lot of different things, but I love having this conversation with you. We can talk every day, all day about this. There's a million different ways that we can help the public, and we can help agents, understand about these changes and what to do with them. But
Yep.
I have to go.
What we're going to do is give you our professional assessment that this situation now exists. The people in the business are going to have problems. There's one or two ways to address it. And then there's other ways I could show that there won't be problems because offers of compensation will exist. So it's going to be a really, really new world. It's exciting for some people. Some people are happy to get rid of the, really part-timers. There's a lot of pros that want the part-timers out. But think about it. NAR is a business. How much are the dues? $500, and there's a million of us. That's 5 million. That's what, 50. I don't even know the amount of money that they're set to collect for 2023.
Right.
So
well, last year they said they had something like 225 million that they collected. Now, I think a lot of agents will leave the business, but that's okay. It's all okay. Those who will stay in the business will be the ones that accept the change and the ones that aren't following all the misinformation. But this has been a great conversation as always, Scott.